I never meant to look at her like that. But there are moments when the air between two people changes, when it feels like even the sound of your breath could give something away. Tonight that moment found us. The cafe was nearly empty. The last of the rain pressed softly against the windows, and the smell of wet pavement drifted in through the cracked door. She sat across from me, Elena, a woman who carried her silence like a secret. Her hair, still damp at the ends, brushed against the collar of her beige coat. She wasn't trying to be beautiful, but she was. That effortless, lived-in kind of beauty that didn't ask to be seen. I'd been helping her with some project, something small, some presentation she didn't really need help with, and now we'd stayed too long. The barista had wiped the counter twice. The clock behind her ticked louder than it should have. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. Her voice wasn't just sound, it was texture. Warm, a little hoarse, like she'd been talking too much lately, or maybe thinking too hard. I shrugged. "You don't talk much either." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "I talk when there's something worth saying." That was the thing about her. Every word felt like a choice. Careful, deliberate. I wanted to know what she didn't say even more than what she did. Her fingers brushed the side of her coffee cup, tracing the rim absently. I watched them longer than I should have. It wasn't the kind of watching you plan. It was the kind that happens when you forget to look away. She noticed. I saw her notice. And instead of pulling back, she held my gaze. Something unspoken shifted, slow, quiet, inevitable. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator behind the counter, the gentle hiss of the espresso machine cooling down. And then nothing. Just her, and me, and that look. Her hand moved, almost as if testing something invisible, until it rested near mine on the table. Not touching. Just close enough that the warmth of her skin reached me. I could have said something casual to break it. A joke, maybe. But I didn't. My mouth opened, and nothing came out. She tilted her head, studying me, the way you'd study a word you weren't sure how to pronounce. "You look different tonight," she murmured. "Different how?" Her eyes dropped to my hands, then rose back to meet mine. "Like you're thinking something you shouldn't." I laughed softly, not denying it, not confirming it. "I've been thinking a lot," I said. "About what?" She asked it lightly, but her voice trembled on the last word. It wasn't fear, it was something smaller, more fragile. I leaned forward just slightly. The table between us felt too wide. "About how time works differently around you." Her breath caught. Barely, but I heard it. A strand of her hair fell forward, and I wanted to reach out and tuck it behind her ear. I didn't. My fingers flexed against the table instead. She looked away first, a small, almost guilty motion. "Don't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because you say them like you mean them." The words lingered between us. The rain had stopped, but it left the world outside shining, wet pavement reflecting the dim yellow glow of the streetlights. And then, a sound. The jingle of the doorbell. Someone stepped in, a man in a dark coat, shaking off his umbrella. Elena's expression changed instantly. She straightened, her eyes darting toward the door. I followed her gaze, feeling the weight of whatever had just been interrupted. Before she looked away completely, she said it, so quietly I almost missed it. "I've been counting the days until you'd look at me like this." Then she stood up and walked toward the man at the door. It had been a week since that night. A week of silence I pretended not to notice. Elena didn't come by the cafe again. She sent a short message about being busy with work, but I knew that wasn't true. She was avoiding me. Or avoiding herself. When she finally texted again, it wasn't to talk about what happened. Just, "Can you drop by my office? I need help with the files." Her office sat at the end of a narrow hallway, quiet and sunlit in the late afternoon. The windows were open, and the city air moved softly through the white curtains. She stood by the desk, sleeves rolled up, hair pinned loosely, a few strands falling against her neck. "Thanks for coming," she said without looking at me. "I didn't mean to leave you hanging the other night." "I didn't notice," I lied. She smiled faintly, the kind that knew I was lying. "You did." The space between us was filled with that strange awareness again, the kind that hums under every word, every movement. I helped her sort the folders. Her handwriting filled each label, elegant, precise. She spoke about deadlines, travel plans, small things that didn't matter, but her tone was too careful. When she reached past me for a pen, her wrist brushed my sleeve. It wasn't even a touch, just fabric against fabric, but it was enough to make my thoughts blur. "Sorry," she murmured. "It's fine." She didn't pull her hand away immediately. Her fingers rested lightly against my arm, as if she was testing how far she could go before it meant something. Then she moved back and cleared her throat. "You're young," she said suddenly, almost sharply. I froze. "That's true. You shouldn't waste your time with someone like me." "Someone like you?" Her laugh was soft, but it didn't sound amused. "Someone who's already made enough mistakes to fill a book." I wanted to ask what kind of mistakes, but the look on her face stopped me. She didn't want to talk about it. Maybe it was the marriage she never mentioned, or the years she'd spent choosing everything but herself. She turned to the window, her voice quieter. "When you get to my age, people stop looking at you the same way. You become background noise. Useful, maybe. Predictable." I stepped closer. "I don't see you that way." She turned then, meeting my eyes, really meeting them. The late sun caught the edge of her face, warm against her skin. "You shouldn't say that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because it's the kind of thing I might believe." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was alive, full of everything we weren't ready to name. A loose strand of hair slipped across her cheek. Without thinking, I reached up and tucked it behind her ear. My fingers grazed her skin, soft, warm, real. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. For a second, it felt like the world outside her office had stopped existing. No sound, no city, no time. Then she exhaled, the faintest tremor in her breath brushing against my hand. "Don't," she said, but her voice wasn't steady. "I wasn't going to." But neither of us stepped back. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was passing by the gallery downtown when I spotted her through the glass, standing near a painting, alone, her hands folded loosely in front of her. The crowd moved around her like water, and still she stood out. She always did. I hesitated before walking in, telling myself it was coincidence, not intention. But the lie didn't even last the few steps it took to reach her. "Elena," I said softly. She turned startled, then smiled, the kind that hides more than it shows. "You're here. I could say the same about you." Her laugh was quiet, a breath. "You're not supposed to see me like this. Out of context. I like this context." Her eyes softened, but she looked away quickly, at the painting behind her. "You always say things you shouldn't. And you always hear them like they mean more than they do." That made her glance back at me, sharply, as if the truth had cut too close. We drifted to a quieter corner of the gallery, where the hum of conversation faded. The light there was softer, filtered through tall windows. I stood close enough to see the tiny freckle beneath her ear, the way her pulse moved faintly against her throat. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice low. "You mean with you?" "I mean near me," she whispered. "People talk. Let them." Her lips parted, a quiet inhale that seemed to pull me closer. Then, her phone buzzed on the small table beside her. The sound sliced through the silence. She reached for it, and I saw the name flash across the screen, Daniel. She froze. So did I. Her thumb hovered over the screen before she silenced it. "It's complicated," she said without looking up. I wanted to ask who he was, husband, ex, something else, but I didn't. The weight of the moment made words feel clumsy. She finally looked at me again, and for the first time, her eyes didn't hide. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said softly. "How am I looking at you? Like you want to remember me later?" I took a slow step closer. She didn't move back. The air between us thinned until I could feel her breath against my cheek, faint, trembling. "Elena!" She closed her eyes, as if saying my name hurt. "Don't," she whispered. "Then tell me to leave." Her eyes opened, steady, conflicted. "I can't." Our hands found each other without permission, her fingers brushing mine, hesitant then staying. The contact was small, almost nothing, but it carried everything we hadn't said. Footsteps echoed nearby, laughter, voices. We broke apart just before two coworkers appeared, greeting her casually, unaware of what they'd almost interrupted. I nodded politely and stepped aside, pretending to admire a painting. She smiled too easily, too quickly, her composure flawless again. But when our eyes met one last time, her mask faltered, only for a second, and I saw it, the same pull, the same quiet ruin I felt. As I turned to leave, she whispered, barely audible over the noise, "You make it very hard to forget myself." I paused, close enough to feel the warmth still lingering where her fingers had been. "Then don't try," I said. It was raining again. The kind of rain that felt like it didn't want to stop, quiet, steady, filling every pause between thoughts. Elena stood at the doorway of her apartment, wet hair clinging to her temple, a cardigan draped over her shoulders. I'd walked her home after a late meeting that neither of us could remember much about. The air between us buzzed with everything we hadn't said. "You didn't have to walk me," she said, voice soft, almost formal. "I wanted to." Her eyes met mine, and for once, she didn't look away. "You shouldn't." I smiled faintly. "You keep saying that. And you keep not listening." The rain grew heavier, pooling at the edge of the streetlight. She stepped aside, letting me in. The faint scent of bergamot and paper filled her apartment, the kind of scent that stays with you long after you leave. She handed me a towel, her fingers brushing mine, too brief to mean anything, too charged to mean nothing. "You're soaked." "So are you," I said before I could stop myself. Something flickered across her face, not amusement, not disapproval, just something barely contained. "I should change," she murmured, turning away. But she didn't move. "Elena," I said quietly. She stopped. Her name hung between us like a held breath. I stepped closer, just enough to see the rise and fall of her shoulders. "You don't have to pretend this isn't happening." She turned slowly, eyes glistening, not from tears, but from the kind of emotion that lives just beneath the surface. "You think you know what this is? I think I know what it feels like." "And what's that?" I didn't answer with words. I lifted my hand, hesitantly, and brushed a damp strand of hair away from her face. Her skin was cool from the rain, soft beneath my fingertips. Her breath hitched, and she closed her eyes for half a second too long. When she opened them, something had changed. The restraint she always carried had cracked. "You shouldn't do that," she whispered. "Tell me to stop." She didn't. Instead, she stepped closer until I could feel the warmth of her body through her cardigan. Her voice trembled when she spoke again. "You don't understand what this would cost me." "I don't care," I said. "You should." Her words were firm, but her hands weren't. They trembled as she reached up, almost touching my chest before pulling back. "You make me forget how old I am," she said quietly. "You make me forget everything else." The silence that followed felt alive, filled with breath and thunder and something electric. Then she did it. She leaned forward, just enough that her forehead rested against mine. Her breath mingled with mine, uneven, warm. Don't, she whispered. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. Our lips were close, painfully close. The world seemed to narrow to the sound of rain, her heartbeat against my chest, the whisper of her breath. Then, a sharp knock on the door. We froze. Elena? A man's voice called. Her eyes widened. A name formed on her lips, the same one I'd seen flash on her phone days ago. Daniel. The knock didn't stop. Elena? Daniel's voice carried through the door, calm, familiar, too confident to belong to a stranger. She turned to me, eyes wide, lips parted but speechless. I'd never seen her that pale. I took a step back instinctively, giving her space, though my pulse was hammering in my throat. She whispered, barely moving her lips. Don't say anything. I nodded. She opened the door halfway. Daniel stood there, mid-40s, composed, the kind of man who always looked like he belonged wherever he was. His shirt was still damp from the rain. I tried calling, he said, glancing past her into the room. You weren't answering. I was about to. Her tone was steady, but her hands were gripping the edge of the doorframe. He looked over her shoulder, eyes landing on me. Didn't realize you had company. Elena hesitated, long enough for the air to thicken. He's a colleague. We were finishing some work. I forced a polite smile. Hi. I was just leaving. Daniel gave a nod that wasn't quite friendly. I'll walk you out. No need, Elena said too quickly. But I was already stepping toward the hallway, the distance between us growing in painful, slow inches. Her gaze followed me the entire time, silent, apologetic, desperate. Outside, the rain had softened into mist. I walked 2 blocks before I stopped. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I saw my hands. She didn't come after me that night. The next morning, she did. She found me sitting in the small park behind the cafe, the same place we met months ago for the first time. The sky was still heavy with clouds. I'm sorry, she said quietly, sitting beside me on the damp bench. You don't have to be. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. You weren't supposed to be there. Who is he? She hesitated, long enough to make the answer hurt. My husband. I turned to her slowly. You told me you lived alone. I do. Mostly. We've been separated for months. But he still comes by sometimes. He doesn't know it's over. The honesty landed heavier than a lie. She looked down at her hands, twisting the ring she still wore, a faint indentation beneath it even though her finger was bare. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You did, I said softly. You just didn't want to admit it. Her breath caught. Don't say that. Why not? Because if you do, I'll stop pretending I can walk away. The silence that followed wasn't calm. It pulsed, alive, dangerous. She turned toward me, eyes shining with the same fear I felt. You shouldn't still be here, she whispered. Then tell me to leave. She didn't. Instead, she reached out and brushed her fingertips against mine, slow, trembling. I lied once, she murmured, but not about this. The world seemed to tilt, narrowing to the warmth of her touch and the weight of her confession. What now? I asked. Her lips parted, no answer, just breath. Then she stood, pulling me with her. No, she said, voice barely steady. We stop pretending it's not already too late. Elena didn't invite me in that night, not with words anyway. Her eyes did. The way she lingered by the door after I walked her home again, soaked in streetlight and silence, did. The storm had ended hours ago, but everything still smelled of rain, wet leaves, asphalt, her perfume faint beneath it all. Are you sure? I asked quietly. She looked at me, really looked, the kind of look that doesn't ask for permission but for honesty. No, she said. I'm not sure of anything anymore. Her hand found the edge of my sleeve, fingers curling there. But I'm tired of pretending that what's wrong is the only thing that's real. Her words hung in the air, trembling between confession and surrender. Inside, her apartment felt smaller than before, like the walls had moved closer, holding the weight of everything we'd held back. A lamp in the corner cast soft light, warm against the pale of her skin. We stood near the window, city lights flickering in the rain-streaked glass. Neither of us moved first. It was that dangerous kind of stillness, too quiet, too charged. I could hear her breathing. Shallow, uneven. Elena! She turned toward me, close enough that her shoulder brushed my chest. Don't say my name like that, she whispered. Like what? Like it means something. It does. She closed her eyes, a small sound escaping her, half laugh, half sigh. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe not, I said. But I know what I feel. She opened her eyes again, and this time there was no defense left. No distance. Only the quiet ruin of wanting something she shouldn't. Her hands rose to my collar, slow, trembling, uncertain. She wasn't pulling me closer, she was holding herself steady. I lifted a hand, brushing my thumb across her cheek. Her skin was warm, her pulse quick beneath it. She whispered, This is wrong. I know. But I don't want to stop. The words barely made it out before she leaned in, not a kiss, not yet. Just her forehead against mine, our breasts colliding, her fingers gripping the fabric of my shirt as if letting go would undo her. I've been counting the days, she said quietly, until you'd look at me like this. My reply came out softer than I meant. You didn't have to count. Her lips brushed mine, not a kiss, more like the ghost of one. A trembling question neither of us could answer. Then she pulled back, just enough to meet my eyes. If we do this, she said, we don't come back from it. I nodded. Maybe we don't need to. The room felt alive, heartbeat, breath, the quiet hum of something breaking open. And then, slowly, deliberately, she pressed her palm against my chest, feeling the rhythm there. Then this is the truth, she whispered. The morning after didn't look like the kind of morning people regret. It was quiet, soft lights stretching through the half-open curtains, the sound of the city still distant, as if the world had decided to wait a little while before intruding. Elena stood by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the rain fade from the glass. Her hair was loose, tangled in the soft glow. She looked peaceful, and tired, and real. I sat on the couch, still trying to believe that the night before hadn't been some imagined crossing of lines. It wasn't about what we'd done, it was about what it meant. That she'd finally let me in, not just into her home, but into the parts of herself she'd kept locked away. You're staring, she said without turning around. You're making it hard not to. That earned me a faint laugh, quiet, shy, not the kind I'd heard before. You always know what to say, don't you? Not really, I admitted. I just stop lying when I'm with you. She turned, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. And what truth are you telling me now? That I'm not sorry. Her eyes softened, something breaking open inside them. She crossed the room slowly, sitting beside me, the blanket now covering both of us. The nearness was gentle this time, not charged like before, just steady. Her hand found mine, fingers slipping together naturally, as if this had always been the ending waiting for us. I used to think love at my age was supposed to be quieter, she said. More sensible. Predictable. And now? She looked at me, eyes tired but alive. Now I think love just finds you when you stop hiding from it. We sat there in silence for a while, watching the sky clear outside. It wasn't perfect, nothing about this was. The world would still talk. People would still look. But there was something unshakably honest about what sat between us now. Her thumb traced small circles against my palm. I could feel her pulse there, slow, sure. You know this won't be easy, she said. I know, I replied. But easy was never what I wanted. That made her smile, and for the first time, she leaned forward, not hesitantly this time, but with quiet certainty, and kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate. Just right. The kind of kiss that feels like an answer rather than a question. When she finally pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine. You're impossible, she whispered. I'll take that as a compliment. It was, she said, laughing softly. We stayed like that, two people who had crossed every line, broken every rule, and somehow found peace in the wreckage. Outside, the clouds broke open, sunlight spilling through. She shifted closer, her head against my shoulder, her hand still holding mine. And for the first time, either of us needed to say anything at all. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?